de Klerk. Grade 12s, today we will be focusing on the topic of quality of performance, which forms part of business operations. Now, traditionally, over the last few years at least, according to the feedback that we got from the examination board, is that this is a section of work that the grade 12s tend to struggle with. So my advice to you today is listen to the various tips and hints that you're going to be receiving from both me as well as Mr. Van Sale, and see how you can learn this section of work appropriately and how it is examined. So in today's broadcast, we will be looking at 2 essay questions on quality of performance, as well as some section B type questions on quality of performance. So just to remind you of our contact details for today, for those who are watching this broadcast live, you are able to contact us via WhatsApp, and the WhatsApp number is 083-792-1239. I'll repeat that, 083-792-1239. And the other information there, Lester Momberg at westerncape.gov.za. You can email him if you would like this slideshow presentation, or you can look on the WCED portal, which is the third information point there. That's the address where you will find this presentation as well once it has been uploaded to the WCED portal. Okay, so like I said, grade 12, today we're going to look at specifically 2 essay questions, and then at the end we're going to look at section B type questions. So what's important is that you need to remember the format for writing the essay questions, and we will ask Mr. Van Sale to remind us of the format that we need to follow when writing these essay questions.
Good. Grade 12s, as you would know by now, and I'm pretty sure you have done this since grade 10 and it would have been drilled into you, a business studies essay has got a specific format. It starts with an introduction, and the word introduction has to feature so that it can be clearly identified as an introduction. The second thing is it now needs to have a body. The word body doesn't have to be there, but this is your headings and your subheadings as it appears in your question, and I will do that when we later on do the essay question. And then finally, it has to have a conclusion. The word conclusion has to be there to identify that this is now the conclusion part. If it's not there, you will lose out on 2 marks, which is actually easy marks that you shouldn't actually lose. Right. Mr. de Klerk, I think we are ready to go on to the next essay question.
Right, so let's have a look at the first essay question. Or we'll come back to this topic here on marking of the essay a bit later, where we can see how the FLASO marks are allocated. But we're going to first look at the essay questions and then come back to these elements at the end.
Right. Grade 12s, as was said to you right at the beginning by Mr. de Klerk, this is actually a very difficult topic, mostly for grade 12s, judging by the examiner's reports. And this is now not just last year, this is now every year. So it's going to be to your advantage if you pay careful attention there. I've put in a slide there that says this specifically. So I'm going to continue with our first essay question. Now there it is. It says there, the Metro Construction specializes in building houses and constructing roads. Their management is concerned about the quality of performance in certain areas of the business. You are an expert in the management of total quality and performance in the workplace. And now comes the question. It says, firstly, discuss how the quality of performance within the following business functions can contribute to the success or failure of the business. Now, I just want to mention there the action verb, and we always need to be very mindful of the action verb because that is going to determine your type of response. And that action verb there is discuss. And discuss will require that you have a statement and a qualifier. Now, before we continue, grade 12s, although this question particularly refers to the success or failure in your core content notes of the WCED, you will see that it gives you not the success or failure factors, but indicators of success. Now, I have gone back as far as 2014 and I've looked at the March and the November papers, and I've never had a question exactly like this one where you have to respond in how does it contribute to success or how does it contribute to failure. So many of these things I've just taken from the quality indicators, and then I have basically put a negative spin on it for failures, and I've put a positive spin on it for positives. So we are going to look at that. The first one that you had to do, or the first thing that you need to do, is to write an introduction. Now, guys, I've put in a slide there to say to you exactly what an introduction is. It requires 2 facts. Those 2 facts will be worth 1 mark each. You have to have the word introduction there because you have to indicate that this is separate to your body. The first bullet point, and this is a mistake that is commonly made by grade 12 learners even at the end of the year exam, is that your first bullet point in the question sometimes becomes your introduction. It cannot be. Everything that is in the question should be the body. Right. The word introduction, as we have said, has to appear there. Now, guys, I have written an introduction for you for this particular question. There's 2, as you guys can see, 2 facts there. Quality refers to a good or service's ability to satisfy a specific need. Why is that important as an introduction? It refers to the topic, quality. The second one, all business functions, because remember, the question spoke about business functions and the quality indicators. So now all I've done is I've given a fact. All business functions have an impact on the business's ability to render good quality products or services, and that should be good enough to give you your maximum marks for an introduction, which is 2.
Okay, Mr. Van Zyl, I found when marking matric papers last year that quite a few learners tend to take the statement that's made in the question and they use that as an introduction, which is actually wrong.
Absolutely. What that basically means is I haven't really used my mind in order to generate a fact. What I've done is I've copied the fact from the scenario, and the way it will be marked is you will get a little symbol called an R with a circle around it. Whenever you see that, you will know that I've repeated a fact. And that is exactly what this is. It came directly from the case study. It means it doesn't come from your own mind, and you, of course, cannot award marks
right,
for
so there
that.
you go, learners. Don't write the statement as you see it in the question paper. You cannot use any of those words or any of those sentences. That's just your starting point as to where you can see what needs to go in the body, and then in your introduction, any other facts still related to the topic as well. Okay, Mr. Van Zyl, would you like to carry on?
Okay, now the first business function that we are going to look at is the production function, and you can see there in the slide that I've written it as a subheading. Remember, the main heading here was how can those quality indicators lead to a success or a failure. So my first one is the production function. Now what I've done is, as I explained to you, I've taken the quality indicator and I have written it as a success, and I've taken 2 of them and I've written them as failures. The first one says products and services should be produced at the lowest possible cost, and you would see there that I've allocated a mark. That is a statement. It will produce lower possible cost. And now we need to say why I say so. You need to qualify it to allow for profit maximization, and that is your success. If there's lowest possible cost, why is that a success factor? Because it allows for profit maximization. The second one says products must meet the customer's requirements. That is a statement. And what must it do in order to meet the customer's requirements? It must be safe, reliable, and durable as your qualifier. Now we get to the failure ones. Now guys, what I've done here is I've just put a negative spin on whatever the indicator was. And the first one says failure to provide goods or services. You see I've added the word failure there, to provide goods and services that comply to specifications. And now I'm saying, why is it a failure? May lead to a loss in sales for your second mark. The first one, or the second one, not clearly communicating the roles and responsibilities of production staff. That is a statement. And why is it negative? Can lead to confusion and the loss of productivity. So there you go, guys. That is the production function. The second one that we are going to look at is marketing. Now, guys, when we work with quality indicators, I want you to think back to when you did this in grade 11 and also the first parts in grade 10 of marketing. Now, marketing is all the activities that need to bring a product to market, and that we refer to as the marketing mix. There are 7 elements, but 4 of them should be quite easy for you to understand, and that is product, place, promotion, and price. Product, place, promotion, and price. Now, all of those things are activities. Now, how you need to think about quality indicators is think about what should tell me that they are doing these activities well. Now, I've taken 2 there. The first one is success factors, satisfying the needs of customers. That's the product part. I've done research. I've made sure that I'm delivering a product that will meet my customers' needs. And what will it do for me as a success factor? It will increase our market share because people are happy. The next one, effectively differentiating our products. Now, guys, differentiating refers to making my products different to those of my competitors, giving them something extra or something like that. Something maybe that it looks different, satisfy a different need or something like that. That is differentiation. So it says there, effectively differentiating products, that is my statement, will lead to an increase in customers. That is my success factor. Right, failure, I've taken 2, not adhering to ethical advertising standards. That is now if I'm trying to defraud people from or not telling the truth, may lead to a poor relationship with your customers if they feel that they are being duped. Now, that's the first one is a statement. And why is it a failure? Because it may lead to poor relationships with customers. The second one, failure to deliver effective customer service, as my statement, may lead to a loss of customers or sales. Right. My next one is purchasing. Now, we also need to think back. What does purchasing do? Purchasing is that business function that makes sure that my business has all the resources necessary in order for them to function. That is now raw materials or the computers that we need, equipment, machinery, all of those things goes through a purchasing procedure, and that is done through the purchasing department or the purchasing function. So let's have a look at the success and failure factors. Success factors, if they buy raw materials in bulk, they can get a bulk discount, so therefore it lowers the prices. Of course, that will be a success factor. Effective coordination between purchasing and the production department. Guys, the production department needs all of these raw materials in order to produce a product or service quite well. And if they don't get it or they don't get the right things, then we cannot deliver good quality products. So I need coordination between the purchasing and the production departments. That's my statement. Why do I need to do that to ensure success? So that purchasing staff understand the requirement of the production process. The next one, in terms of failures, selecting unreliable suppliers in your quality indicators. It actually said selecting of reliable suppliers and all of those. Now I'm just putting a negative spin on it. Selecting unreliable suppliers, that's my statement, may lead to poor quality raw materials. Not placing orders timeously will lead to running out of stock. Now, guys, if you run a factory and that factory runs out of the raw materials, that means production comes to a halt. You still need to pay your production staff, you still need to pay for the rent on the building, but you're actually not producing anything, and that is very, very counterproductive. So we want to make sure that we never run out of stock.
I think we actually saw that now with schools going back right at the beginning of June, where there wasn't sufficient PPE equipment delivered to the schools on time, and therefore there was a week delay in schools actually being able to open. So that's also not related to the production, but we needed that resource in order to produce the service of education safely, and we weren't able to do that. So that could be a good example to use at that point in the essay as well.
That is maybe in an essay to get your originality marks, and we will talk about the originality marks maybe a bit later. Right, the next one is general management. Now I've got a little picture there that tells you basically what the duties are of general management. First of all, these are the people that are tasked with setting the vision, planning the strategies, and all of those things. So they have to do with planning, organizing, leadership, and control. Those are the 4 tasks of management. Now, when we think about quality indicators, of course, we need to see how well are they in terms of planning. Can they organize things effectively? Are they taking control that all of the plans are being executed? Planning, and are they giving leadership? Of course, is a very important one. So I've taken out 2 success factors there. The first one I said, efficient organization of business resources. Of course, that's the organizing part. That's my statement, to provide for the successful achievement of long-term and short-term plans. That's my qualifier. Of course, that is a success factor. Structured standards and norms should be in place. That's my statement, so that control mechanisms can be implemented. That will lead to success. Failures, ineffective communication of shared vision, mission, and objectives may lead to a lack of cooperation between employees and departments. Guys, it is incredibly important for management to make a vision known and let the employees and everybody in your organization buy into it, because it gives the business direction. And that is most important. If we don't give them direction, they are going to be rudderless. Rudderless means I'm not going anywhere. And all the different departments and employees will just do their own thing, and we are not cooperating. And later on, if you do TQM in this section, you will see why it is incredibly important for business functions to work together. Right. So I said there, ineffective communication of shared vision, mission, and objectives may lead to a lack of cooperation between employees and departments. Of course, that is a failure. Failure to recognize changes in the business environments. Now, guys, you've done this since grade 10. The business environment changes constantly, and businesses have to adapt to that. If we fail to adapt to changes in an environment, it means that my employee or my customers have actually moved on, and I'm still delivering things that they would have wanted 2 years ago. That doesn't work. We need to actually make sure where my customers are heading, because the needs change, and if I don't adapt to the changing of needs, then it means I cannot deliver good quality products and services to satisfy those needs. So that is what I'm trying to say here. Failure to recognize changes in the business environments may lead to not understanding consumer needs as a qualifier.
And that actually might lead to the failure of the business as well. And we've seen that, especially during the last 5 or 6 months or so. Lots of businesses have had to adapt what they actually provide to their customers to meet the changes according to what happened with COVID-19. So a lot of businesses have transformed their business completely in order to survive. And those who haven't been able to transform, they've unfortunately, their business become a failure and they've had to close down. So, it's very important. You have to adapt to all these changes to make sure that you can continue operating.
That is true. Yeah. That is true. Right. The next one is the financial function. Now, guys, I'm going to refer back all the time to what the real task is of the financial function. We tend to think of the financial function as the person that do the books and the accounting and all of those things. Although that is true, the financial function's real task is to make sure that the business has enough funds available to be able to pay for all the operational expenses and to keep on producing goods of quality. If the money is not there, the business cannot work. And I'm pretty sure Mr. de Klerk can give you loads of examples actually in COVID-19 where this is actually the case. And I've also later on in the presentation, I've given you 2 facts that also states this. So let's have a look at the success factors. Negotiate better interest rates. That is, if I need to go and take out a loan, and most businesses do, I need to repay it. So if I can negotiate better interest rates, it will keep my financial cost down because I have to repay less money. Right. And the next one is invest my surplus funds. Now, guys, this is money that I'm not using currently. That is surplus money. And I need to use that in such a way that it doesn't just lie there. It needs to work for me to create sources of passive income. That is now if I go and invest that money into savings accounts or invest that money into other businesses that can actually give me a return on investment in the form of dividends. That's passive income. We don't need to do anything in order to get that income. Right, the next one, failure. Poor financial control measures or systems may result in fraud. And I have plenty of examples, and I've given you 2 examples at the end of this, and the one speaks specifically to that. The next one, obtaining capital from unsuitable sources. That is with of course, if I didn't read the fine print and now the interest rate is too long or too high, or the repayment term is too long, that may cost me to pay more money, which lead to cash flow problems. Okay, so guys, that is now the first heading. Now, normally, when you get an essay question, you will have 4 bullet points, 4 parts of the question. In this case, we actually had only 2 parts to the question, and the first bullet point had a couple of subheadings that we have just done. So we are basically now doing the second heading. Now, guys, later on, I'm going to explain to you how we mark the structure of an essay. Now, if you have attempted both of these topics, heading 1 and heading 2, I say attempted. The heading was there, I tried to write something there, you will get at least 1 analysis mark. That is free marks that one shouldn't give away. That is why we need to write headings and subheadings, so that the examiner can see that we have actually attempted to answer the question. And that is good enough for 1 mark. Right, so let's look at our second heading. Explain the benefits MC will gain by implementing a good quality management system. Now, guys, once again, the action verb there is explain. And once again, we are going to need a statement and a qualifier. Now, guys, I haven't put the statement and qualifier in the mark allocations in, but what I want you to do at home is go and see which part will be the statement and which one will be the qualifier. And when you mark your work, always try to mark it in that way. Right, so let's look at the first one. Effective customer services are rendered. That, of course, is a statement. Now, what will the statement result in? Resulting in increased customer satisfaction. That is my qualifier. Time and resources. What about time and resources? That's my statement. Are used efficiently. That is my qualifier. Productivity increases. That's a statement. 1 mark. Through proper time management or using high quality resources. Now, guys, you can actually go through all of these. How much must I write? Guys, I don't foresee that a question like this, even in an essay, will count more than 10 marks. In an essay, it might count 10. So how many of those bullet points do I need? I need 5 of them. As long as you look at the action verb. If that action verb told you to outline something like effective customer services are rendered, is good enough for 2 marks. But if it is explain, discuss, elaborate, you need to have a statement and a qualifier. So right, guys, that now brings us to the last part of our essay, and that is called a conclusion. An essay question needs to be concluded. And as with the introduction, the word conclusion has to be there in order to identify it. It's very important that it's there to get your L marks, your layout marks, which I will do a bit later with you. And then in conclusion requires only 1 fact. And that one fact must not come from the body. It must not be repeated, because then it will be repeated and you will not get your 2 marks. So I've given you a possible conclusion there. The quality of performance in one business function impacts on all the others. If you haven't used that in an introduction or anywhere in your body, that is good enough to give you your 2 marks. Right. Now, guys, in order for you to get your originality marks, it is very important that you make use of 2 recent examples. Guys, it's a bit unfair, I'll be honest, because it says that you need to use current newspaper. So anything within your grade 12 year that is somewhere in the news, or there was an article written about that you can use to illustrate a point, that will be originality marks. It cannot be just any examples. It must be recent and coming from a newspaper. Otherwise, they won't award the 2 originality marks. Now, I've just given you 2 things that you can go and look up on News 24 or Google News or whatever, and you will find plenty of this. So this is ideas. The first one I said, research state capture for the possible failure of the financial function due to a lack of financial control mechanisms. Now, guys, Eskom is one of those things. The Zondo Commission at the moment sits and speaks about state capture and how money was siphoned off from state-owned enterprises. Now, guys, that is lack of accountability, first of all, but also lack of financial control mechanisms to make sure these things cannot happen. And now we have a situation where we've got a state-owned entity like Eskom that struggles to maintain their equipment and things. The money is just not there, it has left. So that is the first one. The second one I've given you there, Dis-Chem was fined because they hacked the prices specifically of surgical masks and things, PPE, during the lockdown time. So basically the prices escalated 300% or something like that. You guys can go and research that, and they were fined because they did that. So you can use that example in the marketing function to have honest marketing campaigns to illustrate the relationship between Dis-Chem and its customers. So that illustrates that point. So guys, make sure that you guys read up on each topic that you do. Go and see if you can find any material that might relate to that, because that will give you your 2 originality marks. I know last year there were very, very few, if any, people that actually received their originality marks. And that is 2 marks that are given to you as long as it is recent. Right.
Yeah, I think it's quite important, as you said there, that the grade 12s have to prepare this before they enter the exam room. You can't go and make up an example in the exam room.
No.
So while you are preparing for that topic and while you are going through all the possible essay questions, you need to actually prepare examples as well, because these examples also need to be put into the body.
That is correct.
Because although it's been split up in the telematics booklet, you can't just put it anywhere. It needs to be related to what you are talking about as well. So like you said, the Dis-Chem incident or the Dis-Chem example that you used, that must go with the marketing to illustrate that fair prices need to be charged to the customers.
That is correct. Wherever you make a statement and you've written your qualifier, now I want to illustrate the point in recency. That is when I use it. It's not afterwards. You cannot now put it after your conclusion, 2 recent examples. It doesn't work because it doesn't illustrate any point. You need to put it in the place where it actually shows you where the points are allocated. Now, grade 12s, the next thing that I want to do with you, we have now given you all the information, and hopefully you guys have made notes and all of those things. This is how an essay is marked, and many of you have received your tests and exams back from your teachers, but you never actually bothered to see how the marks are actually calculated. So this is how an essay question is marked. The first one is F. At the end of your paper, you will see it written underneath one another, and the first one is always F, and that F stands for facts. there are 32 possible marks that you can get for facts. And mostly an essay question has like something
16.
like 44 or almost sometimes 50 possible marks that you can get for facts. You only need 32. And basically that mark is calculated by merely just counting up the marks that you've received for your fact answers, including the introduction and the conclusion. The next one is L, and that stands for layout. Now guys, there are two possible marks there. If the word introduction is there and there's something written underneath, it cannot just be introduction and nothing, something written underneath. Even if you say my auntie is fat or whatever the case may be, something is written underneath the introduction, the L for layout will be allocated to you. Okay, and then of course the second mark for the word conclusion and something written underneath conclusion. It might be wrong, but the word is there, I've attempted it, that's the 2 L marks. So don't throw that away just because you didn't know. The next one is A, and A stands for analysis. Once again, 2 possible marks. If you have attempted to do the entire question, so with other words, and that is why we really want you to write headings and subheadings. If I can see that all the bullet points of the question is there in terms of your headings, then it means you have attempted the entire question. Whether you've written something underneath the heading or not, you have attempted the entire question, and that will give you 1 analysis mark. The second analysis mark you get when you score 16 or more marks in your facts portion. That will give you your second A mark. The next one is for structure and synthesis. Now guys, it normally starts off by, we assume that you will get both your marks. We will subtract marks if any of the following 2 things happen. The first one, the candidate attempted, if you attempted more than 50% of your question, so with other words, there were 4 bullet points, I have attempted 2 of them, that is 50% of the question that was answered, you will already receive 1 structure mark. If you didn't do that, we will subtract 1. And if you didn't write any irrelevant points. Now guys, irrelevant doesn't mean it is something that is just merely wrong. It is something that is completely irrelevant, like this question was about quality and now you are speaking about strategies and legislation and things that are completely not related to the topic. Then you will get a -S, and that is where you can lose the other one. But even if you've made a mistake, all of the facts that you have presented were relevant, although wrong, you will get the other marks. So mostly people receive both their S marks here. And then of course the last one, as we have spoken about, is originality. Did you use recent examples from a newspaper, anything in your grade 12 year to illustrate a point? If you've done that twice, you will get 2 originality marks. And if you count all of those things up, it counts up to 40
marks. Okay, grade 12. So there you have it. That is the flasher that you will normally see when your teacher marks your script. So hopefully you now understand what that means and that you can use it to your advantage. So those are 8 marks that you should be looking forward to getting, because you can actually prepare that going in before you've even seen most of the question. The only challenging one then will be the originality mark. So the other 6 marks, you should be learning your format correctly so that you can get those marks quite easily, and then we add that to your facts to hopefully get you as many marks as possible for your essay questions. Okay, we're going to move on to our second essay question now, essay number 2 in your work booklet, and the question is as follows. Grand Cellular Limited is a large company, so it's important that it's a large company, selling cell phones, iPhones, tablets, and printers to the public and businesses. The company believes that total quality management is important to get things right the first time, every time. Okay, so that's your statement that has been made, and here are the questions that have been asked. So it says, keep the scenario of Grand Cellular Limited in mind and write an essay on TQM covering the following aspects. So grade 12s, here you will see that there are 3 bullet points. So it says the first bullet point, discuss the impact of the following elements of total quality management on Grand Salu Limited, and then they've listed the various elements of TQM that you have to discuss. The second bullet point is apply the PDCA model, and the third one is explain the impact on GC if TQM is poorly implemented. So here are 3 bullet points, which means you have to have 3 headings in your body. And as long as you have those 3 headings in the body, you're going to get your format marks for the A, for the analysis part of the question. Okay? So what I want you to take note of in this question, there are so many marks available here. So if you look at the slide, you'll see the first question there, or the first bullet point. Discuss the impact of the following elements of TQM on Grand Cellular as a large business. Now I've also highlighted large business there because there is impact of TQM on large and small businesses. So grade 12, I think this is one of the places where things get very confusing with this topic, is because we know that there is an impact of TQM on large businesses as well as small businesses, and then we make a mistake in the exam room. When we read the question, we sometimes don't highlight to ourselves large or small businesses, and then even if we know all the work, so for example, if the question like this one is asking for the impact of the elements on the large business, and we give all the impacts of the elements on the small business, then all of that information might be incorrect. So you'll end up wasting a lot of time there. So make sure that when you read the question, especially when it comes to TQM, Total Quality Management, make sure that you are identifying, are they asking for the impact or the effect on a large business or an impact on a small business, and then you relate the relevant facts to that.
Mr. de Klerk, the exam guidelines for 2020 only specifies large businesses. I think certain textbooks might have small businesses in there, so please make sure that what you are studying is relevant only to large businesses. Now, Mr. de Klerk, I think you might put some light on this. Why is it important that we think differently about large businesses versus small businesses?
Well, when we go through the various elements now, we'll actually see that the fact or the different factors that businesses go through need to be handled differently by small and large businesses. A decision that gets made for a large business does not necessarily work for a small business because they might not have all the necessary resources, they might not have all the necessary staff, they might not have all the necessary the amount of customers. So all the different decisions need to be made depending on whether you are a small or a large business. So it's not something that's going to work, or so it's not automatic that if something works for a large business, it's going to work for a small business.
And of course, the impact will affect them differently.
Yes.
So those elements will affect the 2 different business structures differently.
Yeah, so we will see, for example, now during COVID-19 that with the larger businesses will tend to stay afloat because they've got the history, they've got the financial capacity to maybe experience this a bit differently and afford to put the necessary steps in place, whereas small businesses who have never prepared because the world wasn't prepared for this, they might not have been able to do that. So we will have a look at that when we go through the various elements of total quality management here. Okay, so looking back at the question, we have 3 bullet points. So those are your 3 main subheading or your 3 main headings in the body of your essay which need to be addressed. But like I said, there are so many marks available here. There are about almost 16 to 20 marks for each of those elements under the impact of total quality management. So manage your time and the amount that you write adequately, but make sure that you address all 3 bullet points to get your 2 marks for analysis over there. Okay, so we're going to look at each of the elements of total quality management. But before we do that, let's take a look at the introduction. And here's a suggested introduction. And again, as Mr. Van Zyl explained to you earlier, it can't be things that are in the body of the essay. Okay, so something that's in the body of the essay cannot be part of the introduction because then you're either going to repeat it and lose the marks there, or it won't be valid when you write it a second time. So something that you write in the introduction might be worth, or will only be worth 1 mark, whereas in the body it might be worth 2 marks. So you might be penalizing yourself by writing information that belongs in the body in the introduction of the essay. So I've given you 4 possible introductions that you could possibly use here. They never asked us to explain what total quality management is, so you can actually use the definition of total quality management there. And again, whatever you don't use here, you can actually use as part of your conclusion as well, because it's still relevant to the information and the topic that is discussed. So there's your introduction, and you're going to get 1 mark for your full statement that you make. And again, make sure that your statement is not coming from the leading statement that's in your question paper. Okay, so addressing the first bullet point, the impact of total quality management on large businesses. And you can see here there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 marks available just for total client satisfaction. Okay, so this element here is all about keeping the client happy. So you can see there's the word impact is important, because in your exam paper or in your question paper, you'll just see the word impact, but impact actually means positive and negatives. So it means that when you are answering this question, you can write either all positives or all negatives, or a combination of positives and negatives. So it's your advantages and disadvantages, positives and negatives. That's what the word impact means. So whenever you see the word impact, it's going to be about the positive and negative of the element that you are talking about. And in our case here, we are talking about total client satisfaction. And again here, when you are asked to discuss the impact, the verb is discussing the impact. So you're going to have a statement and a qualifier for the statement to get the second mark. So the marks are going to be split. So if you look at the first item under the positives, it's large businesses use market research. That's your first mark for making the statement. And then your clarifier, why do they use market research? To measure customer satisfaction or customers' needs. Okay, and then you'll get your second mark allocated for that. So you can have a look at all the positives and negatives. These are also on pages 69 to 71 in your core notes. But make sure that when you're answering this particular question, you can have a subheading, total client satisfaction, and then you can decide to write either positives or negatives, or a combination of positive and negatives, because the question was not specific when it comes to that.
Mr. de Klerk, maybe it's also worth noting, many times people run out of time because they actually write too much. So maybe it's a good idea it will make your studying also a lot easier. As you can see, there are many available marks here. Only remember 3. Let's count in the fact that we want to make certain. 4 bullet points, either positive or negative or both. You just need 4 of those, any 4 of those bullet points, in order to answer this question satisfactorily.
Okay, then looking back at the next element that needs to be discussed, it is the continuous improvement to processes and systems. And again, you can see there are many marks available. So just learn 2 or 3 positives and negatives, or 2 or 3 of either the positives or the negatives, to make sure that you get your marks here. It's important, though, that you do discuss continuous improvement of processes and systems to make sure that you are getting the necessary marks for your format of the question paper. Okay, I'll quickly go through the next element. I'm just going to go through the slides so you can see how the marks have been split, and you'll see for each of the impacts of each of the elements that have been discussed, there is going to be a statement and then a qualifier to the statement. So all the marks are going to be split here. So make sure that you're answering in full sentences, and make sure that you understand that when you're discussing the impact of TQM on large businesses, or whenever you're discussing the impact, or whenever the verb is discuss the impact, that you're always going to have a statement and then a qualifier to your statement. Okay, and then we have the next impact here, which is monitoring and evaluation. You can have a look at these as well. So again, you can see there are plenty of marks here. You can probably get the 32 marks just from the impact of TQM on large businesses. That's why we say it's important to monitor how much you need to write, so that you don't write too much and waste too much time on the essay question. Okay, and then the last item that we had to speak about was the continuous skills development, or education and training. And it's important, though, to make sure that when you are answering the essay question, make sure you are addressing all of the bullet points. So I've shown you how many marks are available here, but just make sure that they've asked us to discuss the various elements. You must at least discuss one factor under each of those elements to make sure you get the marks. And also grade 12s, this is a question that was asked quite a long time ago, so it is not necessarily a question, or they won't necessarily ask you to discuss so many elements of TQM. They might only ask for 1 or 2 elements or 3 elements. They're not going to ask as many as what was asked in this particular essay question. So those were the impacts of total quality management on large businesses. That was the first bullet point that was needed to be discussed for this essay question. The second bullet point was applying the PDCA model in order to improve the quality of their products. Now, this PDCA model has become a very popular question over the last few years. It's almost been asked in every exam paper. Somewhere in the exam paper, they always ask about the PDCA model, and you need to make sure, firstly, you understand what PDCA stands for. And we can see on the slide there, the P stands for plan, the D is for do, C is for check, and A is for act. And normally when they ask you to explain it, they will give some marks for writing out what the PDCA means. Sometimes it's 2 marks, sometimes it is 1 mark. In this case, I went conservative and I kept it with 1 mark. And then the application part is important. You are being asked here to apply the PDCA model. So you have to apply the model. It's not just explaining the model. You're not going to just explain what plan, do, check, act is, but you're going to actually apply it to the specific scenarios that have been asked to you. Okay, so if you look at the application, you can see the marks have been split again, because when they're asking you to apply something, you're going to have an in-depth explanation and description of how it is applied. So the marks will be split. You're going to have your leading statement again and your qualifier there. So for example, under plan, it's identify the problem. That's your statement. Why do you want to identify the problem? So that you can plan for improving the processes and system. For do, it's implement the change on a small scale. So what's important there with the PDCA model, you're first going to adapt or plan for something, then you're going to implement it on a small scale to see if it works, and then you're going to look at the feedback and see then at a later stage if you're going to apply it on a larger scale or not. Then there is check, which is what I just explained now. After you've implemented on a small scale, you're going to look at the data and you're going to do some research to see whether there's been some change, whether there's been positive change and negative change, and then you can react appropriately and make necessary changes to your plan. Or if your plan has worked, you can implement it on a larger scale, which is then the act part. So again, there are a number of bullet points under each of the P, D, C, and A. You can have a look, but make sure you know at least one of these bullet points under each of the P, D, C, and A of the PDCA model. But make sure, grade 12s, that you actually have studied this PDCA model. It has been in the exam paper for the last few years, so it is a popular question. Make sure that you understand it and how it works and how it can be applied.
Mr. de Klerk, can we just quickly, I think it's important that we refer back to this slide. The application part, you can see very clearly how the marks are allocated. It says identify the problem. It means this is what they should do.
Yes.
That is application. It's not what it is. It's about what they should do. Identify the problem as do. Implement the change. They have to do something.
Yeah.
So that is where the application goes.
So the application is physically applying the model to the situation. Okay, and the last bullet point that needs to be discussed, it says explain the impact on GC of the TQM if implemented poorly. And again, here is a number of bullet points that you can learn. These are on page 72 in your core notes. But what's important here is, again, it's explain is the verb. So it means that you're going to have a statement and then qualify the statement to make sure that you get the second mark. So the mark will be split when the verb is explained. So let's quickly read through it. Setting unrealistic deadlines. What is the problem with setting unrealistic deadlines? Means that the goal might not be achieved. If employees may not be adequately trained, what's the problem with not being adequately trained? It might result in products being poor quality. There may be a decline in productivity. Why? Why is that a problem? Because there might be stoppages when they need to retrain staff or they need to fix problems that go wrong. The image or the reputation of the business will suffer. Why is that a problem? Because when there is a poor or defective quality product, the customer will not be happy with that. They'll either return it, you'll get, through word of mouth, you'll get a bad image of the business, and you might lose future customers. So you can have a look at the number of ways that poorly implemented TQM can impact on the large businesses over here. Okay, then your conclusion for this essay. Yes, suggested conclusions here, but again, you only need one statement for your conclusion, and whatever you haven't used in the introduction, if you have a number of items that can be in the introduction, you can also put that as part of your conclusion. And then the essay question, the examples that can be used in the essay. So again, you need to prepare your examples before you go into the exam venue. The first example was there. Due to the impact of COVID-19, many schools focused on training of staff to do remote teaching and learning using apps like Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, etc. to ensure that teaching and learning takes place. So where will this fit in? This will fit in with the TQM element of educating and training your staff, making sure that the training is relevant to what the need is at that point in time. And now during COVID-19, when we were not able to be at schools, the need was to be able to continue education. And one of the tools we could do with regards to remote learning was Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, where if everybody had a strong enough Wi-Fi connection, you could still make contact with your teachers and you would still be able to learn. And the second example there was SAA devised a business rescue plan and presented it to the government, who then agreed to a 21 billion rand bailout to ensure that SAA had adequate financing and capacity to continue its operations. So that will fit in with making sure that there is adequate capacity and financing in order to make sure that you can continue with the operations in your business. Okay, grade 12, we've got some consolidation activities. I'm just simply going to scan through them quickly, and you can have a look at the answers, or when you see the recording of this video, you can then have a look at the answers to see how they have been, how the marks have been allocated. So that's discussed. So they're the keywords discussed. So you're going to, the marks are going to be split. You're going to need a statement and a qualifier. Then there is this table, which is also in your core notes on page 72, where you need to know the difference between these four concepts over here. And again, the marks have been split. And again, the verb here for question 3 was explain, recommend, or suggest. So if it's explain, the marks will be split. If it's recommend or suggest, the 2 marks will be added at the end. And for question 4, they just ask you to identify the 2 elements or 2 first elements of the PDCA model, which is plan and do. For question 5, you had to identify the business function that was responsible for all of these, which was general management, production, marketing, and finance. Make sure here, grade 12, that you know that you are speaking about the business functions and not the TQM elements. So this is another place where people tend to struggle. They put the TQM elements in here rather than putting in the different functions that need to be done by the businesses. Okay, grade 12s, that is all the time that we have for today. Like I said, this slideshow will be available on the WCED portal. I'd like to wish you well for the remainder of this year. I know it's a difficult time and that you are working under difficult conditions, but know that you have the support of your teachers and your parents and your peers, and they will help you to get through this difficult time and try and do the best that you possibly can during this time. Mr. Van Zyl, would you like to say goodbye to the learners?
I would like to, guys, thank you. It was incredible to be here, just like always, and I echo the sentiments of my colleague, Mr. de Klerk here next to me. Guys, I know this is difficult circumstances, but I think through things like telematics, through efforts of your teachers, I think you guys are well taken care of, and don't stress about it. All is in your court. So there we go.
Okay, till next time, grade 12s. Bye-bye.
Enjoy.